presentation on anxiety and depression from NAMI DuPage. I'm Savannah. I'm one of the adult and teen library associates here at the Woodridge Public Library. And we're very lucky tonight to be joined by Meredith and John, who will be educating us on mental health. Meredith Kober is the Director of Programs for NAMI DuPage. She is a licensed social worker and has worked in the nonprofit sector for over 30 years with experience in the areas of community services, developmentally disabled, child welfare, foster care and adoption, supportive housing, family self-sufficiency programming, workforce development and mental health services. Meredith has experience in direct client service, program development, program management, grant writing, fundraising, and has worn lots of hats in her other nonprofit roles. In her role at NAMI DuPage, Meredith oversees all the programs and services, serves as a community liaison, and assists with fundraising, events, and grant writing activities. Meredith is passionate about providing top quality peer-led services to clients and their families. She and the team at NAMI DuPage stand at the ready to meet individuals and families where they're at to provide resources, education, support, and most of all, hope that they are not alone in their journey with a mental health disorder. And I'd also like to mention that Meredith and John are kindly allowing us to record the presentation. So no worries if you miss anything or if you have a loved one who was unable to attend live. The recording will be available on our YouTube channel within the next week or so. And the chat feature is enabled as well. So if there are any questions and we have time at the end, we can definitely cover those. So without further ado, I'll let Meredith take it away.
Thank you so much, Savannah, and thank you for inviting us to talk with your patrons tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And I've already told Savannah and John, I apologize in advance if you hear my dog barking. Can't seem to stop her tonight. Okay. So like she had said, I'm from NAMI DuPage. We are a nonprofit organization for individuals and family members who are affected by mental health conditions. NAMI DuPage is one of the largest of over 600 NAMI affiliates nationwide, and we're one of the largest in the state of Illinois. We are a peer-led grassroots mental health organization. We serve about 20,000 people each year. All of our programs are facilitated by individuals who are specially trained, and those are individuals who are living with a mental health condition or as somebody who is a family member of somebody living with a mental health condition. We are a nonprofit organization, and we're primarily funded by donations, corporate and foundation grants, fundraising activities like our gala this weekend, and some limited state and local dollars. Right now, we have about 14 staff, the majority of which are actually part-time, but we do have some full-timers, and well over 140 regular volunteers. And within those regular volunteers are a group of individuals that we refer to as our direct service team. And those are the individuals that are actually leading our services, our groups, our one-on-ones, and I'll tell you all about that. But we've got nearly 100 of those individuals right there. And the important thing to remember about our services is that they are all either free or very low cost. And as we go through and talk about our services, I'll let you know which ones cost just a little bit. We are located over in the community center, which is the one-story building across from the courthouse and the jail, right next to the health department. The building is owned by the health department, so we pay rent there. We're just a little office kind of in the back corner, and the whole rest of the building belongs to the health department. And I just say that because some people don't realize that that's not our building. It's not our building. We rent there, and we're a nonprofit that is located within the government complex there. So our mission is to provide support, advocacy, and education in order to improve the quality of life of individuals with a mental illness and their families. And those last couple of words are really important. There's a lot of organizations out there who do provide support to individuals living with a mental health condition, but there's not a lot of organizations out there that are providing support for the family members of somebody living with a mental health condition. So that's one of the things that makes NAMI really unique. And in fact, was the reason that NAMI was founded in the first place. It was started by a locally in 1985, it was started by a group of parents looking for some support for their adult children. And nationally, it was actually started by a group of family members that were looking for support for their organization. That seems to be a common thread with all of the affiliates. So like I said on the previous screen, we're one of about 600 affiliates nationwide right now. We're very fortunate here in the Chicagoland area that there's several contiguous NAMI affiliates in our area. And unfortunately, farther south in Illinois, there's not any affiliates or very few affiliates down there. So they're working hard in Illinois to grow and develop some other local affiliates. A common question that we're asked, keep this in mind as we talk about our services, is that our boundaries are actually pretty simple. It's DuPage County. So a common question is that, is anybody able to use our services? As long as you're able to access it, whether that's remotely when those are offered or physically offered within our county, anyone is welcome to use our services. But because there's other contiguous affiliates right around us, we just don't go and do services in the other NAMI affiliates region or catchment area. So and everyone, I know all the other affiliates are the same. You're always welcome to use any of their services if you access them, and vice versa. They're just not coming over into DuPage County and doing services in our area. So, but you're welcome to access any NAMI's services remotely for pretty much anywhere in the country. And in fact, during COVID, we had some people that were all across the country that were accessing some of our remote services. So anyone is welcome. So we're going to talk a little bit today about mental illness and doing some mental health education here. Why is training on mental illness so important? Well, there's several reasons listed here. One, to break down the stigma and the misinformation surrounding the mental health condition. Mental health problems are very common. The statistic right now is that 1 in 5 individuals live with a mental health condition. Untreated mental illness is very costly. People don't know how to reach out for help. So we want people to know how they can get somebody help, or an individual, how they can get the help, because early intervention is so key to that treatment. And oftentimes people just don't know how to help a loved one. So this is the reasons why we do the training on mental illness. So just so that we're all on the same page, a definition here is that mental illness is a diagnosable illness that profoundly disrupts a person's thinking, their feeling, moods, and ability to relate to others, while also disrupting the person's ability to carry out daily activities. Mental illness is biological. It's not a choice that somebody has. It's not something that they can overcome just through sheer willpower, not related to a person's character. And most importantly, it's important to understand that it can affect a person of any age, race, religion, or income. It is truly non-discriminatory, so it doesn't matter. And again, reflecting back on that, the first bullet point there, that it's a choice or can't be overcome through willpower. That's common when, especially when we talk about depression, some depressive symptoms. There's some people who are like, oh, why can't they just get over it? It's not that simple. It's not something that these individuals who are living with depression have a choice about. So again, want to set that up just so that we're all on the same page before we jump into some of the other information about anxiety and depression. So when we talk about mental health too, it's important to understand that it's all in a continuum. So we've got mental wellness all the way to severe mental illness. So if you can relate that to perhaps eyesight, we've got individuals who have, perfect eyesight, perfect 20/20 eyesight, all the way down to somebody who is completely blind. So we know there's a whole lot in there. So mental health is a lot like that. So somebody who has a mental wellness all the way to severe mental illness. And here's just an infographic from NAMI.org. And if you've not ever looked on NAMI's site before, I encourage you to take a look. There is a ton of information. Every level of NAMI has kind of a different role. NAMI.org is responsible for putting all of the education and information on the website for people, and they're more active in like lobbying for mental health reform, that kind of thing. But there's all kinds of really helpful information on the website. NAMI Illinois is responsible for some of the local growth of the affiliates that I mentioned earlier. Also some local statewide lobbying reform that's important. And then right down to the affiliates, we're kind of described as like the boots on the ground. So every affiliate is the one who's actually in the communities doing the services and connecting with, making other partnerships with other organizations and actually doing the work with one-on-one with families and individuals. So they all kind of have their own role. But if you're ever looking up anything specific about a diagnosis or needing some resources, definitely check out NAMI.org for that information. But if you're looking for services that can support you in what you're doing, that's where you want to check out your local affiliate for NAMI. So here's some just some statistics for you, for those of you who like that kind of thing. Annual prevalence of mental illness by adults broken down by demographic group, by condition. Oops, I jumped ahead a slide. By condition, you can see here that anxiety disorder is the top rated mental health condition, followed by depression. And just to talk about the ripple effect on the person, particularly when they're not getting the help that they need. Individuals who are living with their mental health condition, they're not getting the treatment, they're at a 40% higher risk of developing cardiovascular and metabolic diseases than the general population. And those with a serious mental illness are twice as likely to develop those conditions. Almost 19% of adults with mental illness also experience a substance use disorder. The rate of unemployment tends to be higher for those who have a mental illness as compared to those individuals who do not. And those high school students with significant symptoms are more than twice as likely to drop out as compared to their peers. And on the family, that means that almost 8.5 million people in the United States provide care to an adult with a mental or emotional health issue. And caregivers spend an average of about 32 hours a week providing the unpaid care to their loved one. And what does that mean then on the world? That means that about depression and anxiety disorders can cost the global economy about $1 trillion in lost productivity that each year. And that is really an astounding number. Depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. And what that looks like on the community then is that the mental illness and substance use disorders, when it looks like at the emergency room, about 1 out of every 8 visits to the emergency room have something to do with a mental illness or substance use disorder. And mood disorders are the most common cause of hospitalization in the United States. When it talks about that loss of, for the economy, loss of productivity and earnings, about $193 billion. About 20% of those who are experiencing homelessness in the United States have a serious mental health condition. So not all, that's important to remember too, that not all homeless individuals live with a mental health condition, but about 20, not even 25% of those who do. Unfortunately, though, of those who are incarcerated, about 37% of adults who are incarcerated have a diagnosed mental health condition. About 70% of youth in the juvenile system have a diagnosed mental illness. And for the veterans out there, about 41% have a diagnosed mental health condition or a substance use disorder. So a common question too is, well, what are some of those risk factors of how people might develop a mental health condition? It can be started from a stressful life event, somebody who's maybe lived through poverty, loss of a loved one, moving, job loss. There's a lot of reasons in there that somebody might develop a mental health condition. It could be even a learned behavior. If you have perhaps a parent that's living with a mental health condition and their children are seeing those behaviors and those symptoms, they may kind of take those on themselves as well. If it's somebody who has a mental illness and a substance use disorder, the family history of genetics, perhaps the chemical imbalance. There's many of us who are affected by seasonal changes. Could be that lack of familial support, perhaps a romance or a relationship issue, a friendship even. I mean, any of those can be very stressful for individuals. For somebody who's gone through a trauma, school or work difficulties, perhaps if they've stopped taking a medication or they've changed a medication. So those are all some of the risk factors. And oftentimes there's not any one thing to point to why somebody might develop it. And it could even be multiple factors that somebody develops a mental health condition. So one of the other reasons that we do training, like I'd mentioned earlier, is the stigma misinformation. We want to talk about the stigma around mental illness, And it really comes from that lack of knowledge. It's a fear and mistrust about it. I'm sure we've all, I'm sorry, early on, we've maybe when we first heard about mental illness that, we have kind of that worst picture in our head, somebody who has that extreme diagnosis. And oftentimes that's not typical. Far less people live with a serious mental illness. In fact, it's 1 in 17 right now, as opposed to, the common mental illness is just 1 in 5. So it's just not an understanding that mental illness is biological and that the symptoms are often physical and behavioral. We're not always seeing the physical part of that. Many of us are just observing the behavioral symptoms of somebody that's living with a mental health condition. So here's some other important statistics here for you. Only about almost 44% of adults in the United States living with a mental health condition actually received mental health services in the last year. So that's not even half of those who live with it that are actually receiving the services that they need. This next statistic is kind of staggering to me, that the median delay of treatment is 11 years from the time of their first symptoms. And again, it's the median. So that means that people have been living with their symptoms for a long time before they even take that first step to getting the help that they need. And if you reflect back into those other reasons that I said, we talk about stigma and misinformation, oftentimes it's because they don't know. They don't know what it is, what it looks like. They're afraid of that label. They're afraid of just not understanding that they can get help and that things could look better. Oftentimes they may not even realize that they have a mental health condition. So we're talking like a long time that people are living with those symptoms of their condition before they're actually getting help. And if you equate that to somebody perhaps living with diabetes, somebody that's having symptoms of diabetes for all those years and are leaving it untreated and not getting the help that they need, oftentimes that can be very detrimental to their physical health. So if you can kind of keep mental health is physical health. So you're looking at this and it's not getting treated, there can be a lot of issues that arise from not getting treatment. And that was like that on that previous slide, those who are homeless, those who can be incarcerated, a whole host of reasons. So a common question then is, well, why don't they reach out? Again, they don't know that they have the illness. They're afraid of the stigma. They're afraid or feel like they should just be able to get over it. And just that fear of even trying and failing. We know that early intervention is very key. Without the treatment, it can lead to that unnecessary disability, potential unemployment, homelessness, incarceration, that strain on social relationships, and potentially even suicide. We know that when somebody is receiving the treatment that they need, that recovery is accelerated and the brain is actually protected from further harm. And that when in recovery, people can actually make a very positive impact on their communities. Before the pandemic, only about 23% of Illinois residents actually received the mental health or substance treatment that they needed and were actually able to access the care. 1 in 5 adults, 1 in 6 children, age 6 to 17, experience mental illness each year. And since the pandemic, anxiety and depression, 2 of the most common mental illnesses, have actually doubled. For those of us who maybe didn't really understand anxiety or depression, I feel like the one positive thing that's come out of COVID is that people have a better understanding of what that looks like for somebody that might be living with those conditions. I think many people who, were very nervous about the pandemic early on, not understanding it. Nobody really did. And we're in our homes, we're cut off from our, perhaps even employment, our social relationships, all of that. I think for many people who never experienced a mental health condition before, they might have started to experience feelings of anxiety or even depression. So they have a new understanding of what that looks like for people who are living with a condition. And there was certainly more information out there about anxiety and depression than there was in the past. So, it brought to light these issues in a way that wasn't present before COVID. So I think we can all agree nobody's liked living through all of this. It's been horrible. But if there's, again, one positive thing, is that there has been some more attention to mental illness and the support and the help that that they need, and also how they could live a life in recovery and treatment. So we talked about some of the risk factors of mental illness. These are a few of the protective factors for individuals. So for those who are active, if somebody who's living with a condition and they're living in recovery with their diagnosis, they're going to be individuals who are putting into practice those healthy practices. They're somebody who's using positive problem-solving skills. Perhaps they are individuals who have a religious practice or a spirituality, avoiding alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. For those who are on medications, that can often be a conflict with their medications, but even if it's somebody who's not on medications, avoiding, I should say, the overuse of those things, because the overuse of them can lead to a whole host of other issues. These could be individuals that have a very positive and consistent home and family routine, those who have a high self-esteem, certainly those who have a good social support system with their friends and family. Their basic needs are getting met. They have a roof over their head, a bed to sleep in, they've got food, they've got employment, and also individuals who are very bonded to their community. So those are all protective factors for individuals who, whether it's somebody who's living with a mental health condition, that are putting those things into place for themselves so that they're staying healthy and on track, or individuals that perhaps have not developed a mental health condition. These are some things that they have already in their life that are keeping them healthy. So it's important to understand when it comes to recovery and treatment that mental illness, while it's not curable, it is very treatable. And when we talk about recovery, what that means is that it's the state of living for somebody with a mental health or substance use disorder where they've accepted that they have the disorder, and they're just focusing on staying healthy and improving and bettering their health, their relationships, and just in general, their overall well-being. What recovery means for one person is not necessarily the same for another person. And it's important to remember that and I think we can say this about anything in our life, when you are the person that's directly involved with setting your goals, your treatment plan, those outcomes are going to be way better. I don't think any one of us really likes for somebody to say, this is what you're going to do, and in the order that you're going to do it and when you're going to do it. Many of us would be like, excuse me, don't I have some say there? So when people are directly involved in designing their own treatment plan, the outcomes are going to be much stronger. Recovery is not typically in a straight line. There's a lot of ups and downs. There could be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But one thing I've learned about individuals that I know who are living with a mental health condition is that they're often very in tune with how they're feeling and how they're doing. I had a conversation today with someone that, he knows that pretty much every spring he kind of has a setback. So, but he knows what those symptoms look like. And so he's able to get himself the care and the treatment that he needs. And he just takes that time with that. And when he's doing better, perhaps a medication adjustment, then he's able to get back out there. So it's, individuals just being very in touch with what those symptoms look like in their life. And again, that's not the same as, the 3 or 4 other people that I talked to today that have a mental health condition. That's unique to him. But those individuals have, their own set of symptoms that they need to look out for. So just understanding that it's not the same for every single person. The medications are not the same for every person. The frequency of therapy is not the same for every person. So it's just creating your own treatment plan and trying to, as much as possible, we talk about like a 4-legged stool, it perhaps includes medication, includes therapy, and includes your own wellness, and also our peer support. Those are the 4 things. So when you're keeping all 4 of those things going, you have a really good chance of moving forward. If one of those things are off, again, think about the stool that's supposed to have 4 legs and all of a sudden it has 3. Well, it's going to topple a little bit if something seems to be off. Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit here, and we're going to talk about just two of the mental health conditions today, just anxiety disorder and depression. The first one here is anxiety disorder. It is the most common mental health concern in the United States, and I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can't list all of the criteria for you, but it is a group of related condition, each of them with their own unique symptoms. The most common anxiety disorders is generalized anxiety disorder. You might have heard that referred to as GAD, obsessive compulsive disorder or OCD, panic disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And we're not going to go into a deep dive in any of these, but these are just the kind of the most common ones that you might have already heard about. And again, if you want to look up anything specific on any of these disorders or anything else, definitely check out NAMI.org. There's a ton of information on there. But in general, what they all share are these signs and symptoms. We're going to talk about emotional, thoughts, behavioral, physically. I'm not going to read through every single one of them here. You can see them on the screen, but I'll pull out a few here. Physically, these may be things that the individual is feeling or experiencing. They may not necessarily share that with you. They may talk about headaches, they may talk about being tired, perhaps restless, but you're not necessarily going to see these things. You may see, though, behaviorally what that looks like. They may be somebody who's experiencing panic attacks, they're having trouble sleeping, avoiding specific places. They may be too emotional, very tense or jumpy. So it's important as I'm talking about all these signs and symptoms with this one and then depression, keeping in mind that as individuals are experiencing these and as they're sharing them with you, perhaps, that if it's something that's they've not talked about before and you've not picked up on before, and it seems to be lasting for a period longer than 2 weeks, that's really key to look out for, that perhaps that person needs to get some help. And reflecting back too on those risk factors, maybe they've lost their job recently, or they've lost a relationship, or they've moved. There could be some really stressful life events that have kind of triggered some of these feelings. And oftentimes, I think it's natural, if anyone of us who've lost a job, we're experiencing some of these signs and symptoms already. But most people, not all, are able to, if they're having trouble sleeping, it might be for a few nights. It may not be for a month. If you're feeling, you've got a headache, you might have it again for a day or so, but not necessarily more than 2 weeks. So for any of these things, if it's something that seems to be chronic and is lasting for more than 2 weeks, definitely encouraging your friend, your family member, yourself to get the help that you need. Kind of just start taking a mental note of when these signs and symptoms might have started so that you can get some help for your loved one. Okay, we're going to jump into depression now. So depression, while it's not as prevalent as anxiety, is a very serious mental health condition. And it requires not only some understanding and some sensitivity around that, but also some medical care. It's more than just feeling sad, which I kind of described just a minute ago, or going through a rough patch. Again, if it's lasting longer than that 2 weeks, it really involves a general loss in color in someone's life. We have one of our speakers who describes it as wearing cement shoes. It's, literally physically difficult to just kind of put the next step in front of the other and do the next thing. Those who may live with depression, when it's untreated, especially, they may have trouble getting out of bed in the morning. And that's where I think, some of those previous understandings or comments from people like, well, they just need to snap out of it. They need to get over it. They need to get up. They need to take their shower. They need to go to work. But for somebody who's living with depression, oftentimes they literally cannot. So it's just understanding what that looks like for them. And again, it is non-discriminatory. It can affect anybody. And it affects 16 million American adults. Almost 7% of the population have had at least one major depressive episode in the last year. And what's really sad is that without that treatment, and again, thinking back to those reasons why people aren't getting the treatment, but without the treatment, those episodes of depression can last for just a few months or even several years. So we remember that previous bullet point on there about the median time is 11 years. So if you've got somebody that's living with these symptoms, it's a long time before they're actually getting the help that they need. And here's some of those signs and symptoms here for you. So physically, just decreased energy. They might talk about having chronic pain, unintended weight loss, headaches. Emotionally, they might feel those deep feelings of sadness, perhaps feeling hopeless. Behaviorally, a loss of interest in activities or hobbies. Again, these are going to be the things that are definitely going to be more easily observable. Maybe you have a friend that used to be in a bowling league with, and every Thursday night it was bowling, and all of a sudden they're like, I don't really feel like going anymore. And that should be like a red flag. Okay, why are they doing that? Why are they socially withdrawing? And you just don't know. You're not getting an answer from them. So really kind of pushing and leaning into what's going on with them. They may have some pretty serious thoughts about death or suicide, maybe self-blaming, a lot of criticism going on. So again, any one of these symptoms could be something to really take a look at, particularly if it's lasting for more than 2 weeks. We've all had feelings and periods of time in our life where we might be sad about something. Perhaps we had a loss of a loved one, and it's very, very normal to be sad and depressed about that. But again, if it's lasting for more than 2 weeks, that's a really key to get some help. We're going to switch gears a little bit here, and we have John with us. I believe one of the most impactful parts of what NAMI DuPage does is we have those who are willing to share their story of living with a mental health condition. And we've done this for years. And John has been a speaker with us in the past at NAMI DuPage, and he's come back and is willing to share his story again. But we have some amazing speakers who, and again, every person's story is a little bit different. Their journey is different. We have speakers who go out into the majority of the DuPage County hospitals and inpatient units, outpatient units, or join me on community presentations like this or other venues. And they're just there to share their story. Oftentimes, particularly in the hospital, you have individuals that are sitting there for the first time. They're newly diagnosed, they're scared, they're confused, feeling hopeless. And you have somebody come in from NAMI that's sharing their story and saying, listen, I get it. I've been exactly where you are. It's going to be okay. Here's my story. And those have proven time and time again to be so impactful. So I can't say enough about our speakers. They truly share what it looks like to live in recovery and what that looks like to give hope to others. So I have the privilege of introducing John to you tonight. So John, I'll let you take it away.
All right. Hi, my name is John Zern. I grew up in upstate New York. My wife and I enjoy hiking and gardening. We also have a large collection of DVDs. My favorite hobby is creative writing, and I've been writing for many years. I've published and self-published many poems and stories. In high school, I was a nice guy, but not a particularly good person. Since the drinking age was 18 back then, older brothers and fake IDs allowed us to start drinking at 14. So we drank on weekends and every summer. I also could be reckless at times. For example, once I was driving a friend's Mustang with 3 other people in the car after I'd been heavily drinking. I was speeding, so when I got behind the car, I passed it in no passing zone. There was another car coming in the opposite direction, and my car barely fit between the car I was passing and the other car coming at us. I could have killed a number of people if I hadn't been so lucky. However, in high school, I was a pretty good student, ran cross country and track and played the trumpet, so I did get accepted into college. I eventually earned a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in English from Western Illinois University, which is where I met my wife, Donna. Before I retired, I worked in my family's hardware store, taught school, and was a counselor at several sheltered workshops. My first real crisis occurred before my freshman year in college when I had a life-changing experience. I became very ill with appendicitis and needed emergency surgery. As they were preparing me for the operation, the nurse repeatedly asked me what my religion was. It was the first time in my life that I realized I could die. Since the appendix didn't burst, I was fine, but the thought of death began to haunt me. After 2 years of college, seemingly out of nowhere, I began racing my thoughts as fast as possible, trying to get some answers about death. I was hospitalized for several months. It took about 3 weeks before I even knew my own name. The psychiatrists weren't sure what was wrong with me, but they gave me medicine that seemed to help. But the fear of death, along with a major breakup with a girlfriend, led to a deep depression. I eventually attempted to take my own life. I recovered after surgery and was in the hospital for several months. I also had electroconvulsive therapy, which for me helped really loosen the deep grooves of depression that had settled into my mind. Then, because of the racing thoughts and clinical depression, I was accurately diagnosed with bipolar disorder. However, when I felt better, I stopped taking the medication, and eventually I became delusional. I believed I was Jesus and people were trying to find and help me. I'd say bizarre things to relatives and look for my name in the Bible and newspapers. Eventually, I believed someone would find me if I drove my car erratically. Instead, the police found me, smashed my car window, and dragged me out of my car. I was arrested and taken to Cook County Jail. I was there for 4 or 5 days, where I was put in restraints and bullied by other inmates who could come into my open cell door. Later, 2 guards pushed me out the front door of the jail with no shoestrings or belt and told me to behave myself. I was arrested again for wandering around Chicago trying to direct traffic, and because I missed the court date for the driving incident. I returned to Cook County Jail, where I was there for 4 or 5 days again. While incarcerated, an inmate hit me in the head with a shoe, and I needed 3 stitches. I was released when a couple who once took me in paid my bail. Terrified by the experience, I took medications for a long time, but eventually I stopped and I became delusional a number of times. For example, one of my delusional episodes took the form of my believing I was the 5th Beatle, which was a famous rock group. I believed the Beatles were trying to find me, so I tried to get their attention. First, I performed a ritual by sitting in front of my TV while repeatedly playing a John Lennon record. For 18 hours straight, I obsessed over the words until the music somehow matched what I was seeing on TV. Some lyrics and music represented good people and events, others represented bad events and people. Then I cleared all the glass and garbage from the front of my apartment complex so the Beatles could land their plane. In addition, I threw all my belongings in the dumpster to prove my loyalty and commitment. Hours later, I put everything back and cleaned my apartment until it was spotless to again prove my sincerity. Finally, while listening to a Paul McCartney album, I heard the lyrics and the gray goose flew away. Then I saw my shadow on the wall. I knew they weren't coming. Somehow the episode ended, and it was one of the loneliest moments of my life. So over a 6-year period, I was admitted to a number of private hospitals and involuntarily committed 5 times to state mental health facilities for months at a time. Every time I became ill, I would blame my family, my job, or other circumstances instead of recognizing I had a serious illness. I believed if I didn't take the medications, then I didn't have the disorder. Now, it would seem obvious I needed medications, but I still resisted for a number of reasons. First, I consider mental illness to be a character flaw that demonstrated a lack of faith and strength. Secondly, media with words like nut job, psycho, and crazy were words I could never identify with. Third, medications were seen as magic beans that solved all problems. Almost never did I get credit for all my hard work and self-sacrifice. In addition, the medications allowed me to have appropriate speech and behavior, but I often still felt miserable. But most importantly, my pride would not allow me to follow through with medications. So acceptance for me became a very long process. Over time, I began to understand that if I ever wanted to stay safe and lead a normal life, I needed to take medication and dramatically change my attitude and lifestyle. I needed to stop getting drunk and began to recognize the fact that bipolar disorder was drastically affecting my career. I also needed to take therapy much more seriously. It wasn't a matter of being willing to take the medication. It meant that I was afraid not to take them. I began to understand when I became ill, others would have to make all my decisions and I could end up anywhere. In addition, I have to start over from scratch with medications, employment, housing, and relationship. At last, I finally understood that bipolar disorder is a physical illness with psychological symptoms. So the illness wasn't my fault, but it was my responsibility. I needed to get over my pride, to take medication, to take therapy seriously. Therapy became very important because it helped me to understand my family dynamics and to sort out my experiences with mental illness. This meant figuring out some kind of resolution for my conflict with my parents and unraveling my thoughts and feelings that occurred when I was ill. Therapy also helped me to figure out how bipolar disorder was affecting my relationships and my life, especially my feelings of anger, frustration, and depression that interfered with my ability to work and maintain normal social relationships. Medication and therapy helped me manage these problems. Over the years, I've had a number of wonderful psychiatrists and therapists who have helped me to stay healthy, improve my self-confidence and self-esteem. They also consistently encourage me to write creatively. Medication and therapy have made all the difference for me, but it still has been a difficult task to lead a productive life. So recovery for me has been a lifelong process. Since there is no cure for bipolar disorder, I constantly need to monitor my thoughts, moods, and behavior, and generally take care of myself. Medication has been an indispensable part of my long-term recovery. However, I also have a support system. My primary support is my wife, Donna. When I explained my illness on our first date, she didn't abandon me. Gradually worked together in our relationship to help me with my anger, anxiety, and feelings of insecurity. Donna has also been accepting my limitations, such as my difficulty in traveling to places overnight, my need to stay with friends on visits for only a few hours at a time. In addition, we have discovered that often there is no apparent objective reason for my anxiety. It's simply the brain chemistry problems at work. So often there is no blame or fault involved. Other members of my support system include some family members and psychiatrists, together with a number of positive coping skills to help me stay out of hospitals and to lead a productive and fulfilling life. One of these coping skills includes meditation that helps me with racing thoughts, anxiety, and painful memories. Meditation has also helped with my spiritual growth. Another important coping skill is physical exercise that helps me transform nervous energy and anxiety into productive activities like doing chores and hiking in the woods. As a coping skill, creative writing has also helped me express my feelings, find closure for difficult experiences, and help redirect delusional thinking and behavior into safe and more productive possibilities for my creativity. I have also written books on my experiences with mental illness. Since I'm intelligent but have a great deal of trouble with stress, it was hard to find a good job with no stress. Creative writing has given me an outlet for my creative intelligence that I couldn't get at work. Now the only stress is the stress I put on myself. Other coping skills include following a daily routine, getting enough sleep, and remaining socially active. When I'm in a routine, I'm less likely to become bored, obsessive, and worried. When I get enough sleep, I don't become irritable and mistake tiredness for being symptomatic. Being socially active helps me think about others and forget about my own worries for a while. As a member of NAMI DuPage, I've been able to gain self-confidence in social situations and have found many kindred spirits who share my challenges with mental health issues. I realized I wasn't alone. For most of my life, I've been required to hide my illness from others, including employers and friends. Once I told them, I couldn't untell them, so I rarely risked it. At NAMI, I've made new friends and continue learning more about my bipolar disorder from their experiences and knowledge. Finally, it's my belief that mental illness is still widely misunderstood, and there still exists a lot of stereotypes about its causes and treatment. This includes society as a whole, and even individuals who struggle with mental health issues. I also believe that telling my story may provide encouragement for others like me who are struggling to lead a fulfilling life. I'd also like to emphasize that NAMI DuPage offers a number of programs and events that promote self-discovery, support, and education. In addition, NAMI helps individual families and friends understand and manage the often lifelong challenges associated with mental illness. My only regret is that I became involved in NAMI earlier in my life. I'd like to finish by reading two short poems of mine. The first one, called Manic Train, portrays the difference in perception between a symptomatic individual and the police. My manic train of thought and sound raced down a magic mountain. Providence bounced up and down, and signs were pure emotions. As my train lurched to a stop, I felt the engine stall. When I wrestled with the cops, they saw no train at all. Then finally, I'd like to read an inspirational poem of mine called Love Will Find a Way. When the battles that you fight are too much for you to bear, while the tears you shed at night drive you deep into despair, if the wisdom that you know can't release you from your pain, if your troubles come and grow like a cold forbidding rain, love will find a way. When your hopelessness surrounds you like a dark invading cloud, when your misery confounds you and your burdens wear you down, even though your heart is aching with the agony of doubt, even though advice you're taking isn't useful to you now, love will find a way. Because love has no beginning, it has been here all along. Because love has never ended, love has never really gone. So beyond your fear and agony, wait on love to get you through. For behind the world's uncertainty, then love, it will find you. Thank you for letting me share my story. It meant a lot to me.
Okay. Thank you, John. I always enjoy hearing those poems.
Thank you.
Savannah, I think we can pause here. If anybody has any questions for John, they can enter them in the Q&A or chat.
Deanne, thank you again, John, for sharing.
Oh,
Really
thank you.
appreciate having you here this evening.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
that's
always
it.
appreciate you sharing your story. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I don't see any questions yet or any comments. So, okay. Does anybody have any questions for, oh, I guess there is one that just came through. Somebody said that they love John's poems, especially the love poem.
Thank you very much.
Another comment. Thank you, John, for sharing. Okay. Thanks all. If there's any more, John, I'll pass them on to you.
Thank you very much. And thanks for having me today, you guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
John's going to sign off and we're gonna continue. So if anybody has any questions for me, just let me know. I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen here and we will jump back into the slides here. So one of the things that you can do, I'm sorry, I'm just going to pause here. I'll make sure there's not any questions. Patsy, you've got a question here. I'm going to come back to that. And thank you for John for sharing. Okay, I'll pass those on to John. Okay, one of the things you can do is to help end the stigma surrounding mental illness. That's so important because the stigma around it is actually one of the barriers to treatment. So if you hear people talking about it, you know, we want to just do anything we can to break down the stigma surrounding mental illness. You yourself or encourage other friends or family members to just become educated on what those signs and symptoms of mental illness might be and some resources that are available to them, one of which is NAMI DuPage. And what we're going to talk about next is what we offer. Helping to do anything you can do to increase access to services, promoting well-being, not only for yourself, but for other friends and family members, support any community forums or things that are out there that have anything to do with mental health, mental illness, if you can support with that community work. And employees, employers, you know, working together to support an individual's mental wellness is really important too. So I'm going to talk about our services at NAMI DuPage. I'm going to start first with our peer services. And again, that means individuals who are living with a mental health condition. We offer one-on-one peer support for individuals that are living with a mental health condition. So that is what we call, the work is being done by somebody that's a recovery support specialist, and they are trained to work one-on-one with those individuals, or a family member who's been trained to work with other family members. Those are called our family partnership professionals. And they're just there to help the individuals get to the next step in their recovery. They can schedule appointments right through our website. We have a group of individuals who are trained and getting trained to meet one-on-one with those individuals. We do have what's called the living room, and that's open Monday through Friday from 3 to 8. And that's a place where individuals can go if they're experiencing an increase in symptoms. Perhaps you're not sure, is this somebody that might need to go to the hospital, or maybe it's not quite to the hospital level, but just somebody that is, you know, very upset, agitated, whatever that increase in symptoms looks like for them, and they just need somebody to talk to. The living room is a safe place to bring them to, and they're met by a peer, by somebody, again, who's living with that mental health condition themselves, but they're trained to work with those individuals. They are screened when they come in, just to make sure that they're able to meet with somebody safely, and that they're not experiencing a level of symptoms that's kind of beyond one of our recovery support specialists. So if that's the case, then that's where we loop in that partnership with the DuPage County Health Department's crisis unit. And we have a clinician come over, and then together, the three of them will sit down and just kind of talk through what the situation is, if it's somebody that does need to go to the hospital, then they'll make that recommendation from there. The health department does at this time serve individuals in the crisis unit that has Medicaid. So individuals who have Medicaid might be able to benefit from the crisis unit services there instead. So those are some options. The support department also oversees all of our support groups. So we have groups that meet for individuals, for families, a partner group for somebody who has a spouse or a partner with living with a mental health condition. That one's on hold for right now until we get a new facilitator to lead that. A parent support group. We have one that's for those who have lost somebody to suicide, a dual diagnosis, which means it's for individuals who are living with a substance use disorder and the mental health condition. A group for those who identify as LGBTQ and also living with a mental health condition. And we have a group called Sharing Hope that's specifically for the Black community. So that's all on our website, all of the dates, the locations, whether it's hybrid, whether it's on Zoom, all of that information is on our website. Same with the living room and the peer services, it's all there. The peer counseling, the one-on-one, that's one of the only areas that costs a little bit of money. And we do offer a sliding fee scale for those who qualify. It could be as low as $1.50 a session, and it would never be more than $15 a session for an individual. So, and those services are designed to be a complement to those who are receiving clinical support. So if somebody sees their therapist maybe twice a month, maybe they see a recovery support specialist on the off weeks. So they're never in competition. The peers are designed or trained to encourage the individuals to share what their therapist is saying. So what does your therapist say about that? Okay, well, how can we work towards those goals that your therapist has laid out? So never in opposition to the therapist, but always in complement to what those goals and objectives are. That department also oversees our NAMI PD Connect program. And what that is we have a partnership with about 8 police departments right now in DuPage County, where they're able to make a direct referral back to us when they're out on a call and it seems to be mental health related. They can reach back out to us through a specific portal, giving us the information where we reach back out to the individual just to let them know about our services. Gosh, I just looked at those numbers the other day, like around 270 referrals so far this year from just those 8 departments. And so again, we're able to just reach back out and say, hey, we got a referral from such and such police department. I'm calling from NAMI DuPage. I just want to let you know about our support groups and our peer services or the family services, whatever it is. So hopefully it's, they don't always answer the phone, and that's okay. But, it's just seeds that are getting planted, and then they know, that we're there for them when they're ready. This is a little bit about the program here. And the goal is to eventually reduce that recidivism rate on those calls. So if we're getting the referral from the police department, we're able to connect with the family, we're able to engage them in services, then perhaps the individual is getting the help that they need and the services that they need. And then there's less calls to the police department from that particular person or family. The community education department oversees a couple of education courses, one in particular, and this is one I wanted to point out. I think somebody asked a question about how they can kind of support or help somebody who maybe doesn't want it. We really recommend the family to family class. That was one of the core first education courses that NAMI created over 40 years ago. It's had a few iterations of it. In fact, it just underwent a new one here in 2023. It used to be a 12-week class. Now it's an 8-week class, and it's for family members or friends who have a loved one with a diagnosis. That's going to be the class where there's going to be a deep dive into the education surrounding mental illness. What does it look like? What's going on in the brain? How to have those conversations with your loved one, how to help your loved one when they don't need help. All of those things are covered, and you're able to do that in a safe place with other individuals who get it. They're going through the same thing. And we always like to say at NAMI DuPage, you're not alone. And that's definitely true in the family to family classes. It's been a true lifesaver for individuals or families who needed that for their loved ones. So we don't have next year's courses on our website yet, but we will hopefully in the next month. We have 2 that are wrapping up right now. So we encourage you to take a look at the schedule once those get posted and jump into any of them. A couple of them will be on Zoom, but the majority are meeting back in person now. NAMI Basics is for parents who have a child under the age of 18 with a diagnosis. We're not really offering that in person right now, but we do, if you get signed up through us, we'll connect you with NAMI.org's NAMI Basics on Demand, and you could watch it in your free time. For those who want to do kind of a deep dive too into those signs and symptoms and how to help somebody, we recommend Mental Health First Aid. There's one for adults who work with adults, or adults who work with youth. You can do both tracks. That information's on our website too. WRAP is the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, or peer-to-peer. Those are for individuals living with a condition. And those courses are designed to help the individual kind of create a toolkit for themselves so that when they're experiencing an increase in symptoms, that these are the things that they need to do. You heard John talk about some of the things that he does to stay well. If he's not sleeping well or not eating well, that kind of helps people stay back on track. Okay, I'm experiencing symptoms. What aren't I doing that I'm supposed to be doing? And so they're able to maybe have a support system. Okay, if I'm feeling this way, I'm going to reach out to my friend Steve, whatever. And so that's a really important course for individuals to take when they're living with the condition. And it's most helpful for them to take when they're in a good place, when they're doing really well. Take the class, create the toolkit so that when you're not doing well, which could happen, then they're able to reflect back on that then. The hospital recovery connections is kind of what we just described with our speakers. So they go into the hospitals, they go to community presentations, and they're there sharing their story. We also offer social recreation activities that happen all week. We don't do any on the weekends right now, but just during the week, during the daytime or in the evening. And we have a couple that are still virtual, but most of them are meeting in person again. And that's just a way to keep people connected. It provides a safe place for them to be around other people who are living with a mental health condition. And we have tried to have a little bit of variety. And we were able to keep all of these going during the pandemic virtually, which was really incredible. This is why we were able to have some people that joined us from all parts of the country because they were looking for some things to do. And so they stumbled on our recreation activities that were happening during the week. We learned from the coroner a couple of years ago in DuPage County that one of the factors that individuals who chose to die by suicide was social isolation. So that's one of the reasons that we keep these going. We want people to stay connected with one another so they can get the help and the support that they need. At NAMI DuPage, we have all kinds of needs for volunteers. A whole variety of things, whether it's a reception or perhaps somebody who likes to do job coaching with individuals, general office work, a whole variety of things, but that's on our website. You can apply there if you're interested, and also interns. If you know anybody that is in school that needs an internship, we are accepting applications for that as well. We have a supported employment program, some job readiness classes that happen for like about 5 weeks. And we're primarily focused on individuals who maybe needed to take a step out of the workforce for a little bit because of their mental health condition. There's other great organizations in the community who do some workforce development, Work Not DuPage, for example. We're focused mainly on really kind of hand-holding that person through that process. If they needed to take a step back because of their diagnosis, what can we do to help them to get back out there? And that's where our job coaching comes in, and even our topical job club sessions. We also have a couple of social enterprises. We have one, I really got to change that slide because I actually opened it in the fall. Coffee shop, actually not catering any longer, but just it's open from 10 to 2 at our center, all prepackaged items, but it's run by a couple of volunteers. So 2 very dedicated volunteers named Fabian and Michelle. They're there nearly every day. So if you're in the area, stop in, pick up a snack. And then our print shop, full service print shop, and we have been busier than ever. We stayed open during the pandemic as well. We do have kind of a marketing arm called Lemon Press, and he's the one that connects with organizations or businesses that need the print work, and then we do the print work. We have a lot of volunteers who do the work, so we're able to stay very competitively priced, and it's a really good arrangement for individuals who again need that volunteer time because they may be individuals who can't be in the workforce, but they want a place to go. They want a place to contribute and to feel like they're in a safe, welcoming environment. And that's our space. We just got an email the other day from one of our amazing volunteers. And he shared just that, like he knows when he walks in, that he just feels accepted, understood, and he just really enjoys being around us all because we're all kind of in the same place. Our staff and our volunteers, we're all kind of working there together. So anyway, our volunteers are fabulous. Print shop, if anyone needs any work, they do an amazing job. Our youth services, we have a team that goes out into the schools. It started off with a 9th and 10th grade program about 14 years ago, and that program was actually gifted to NAMI National. So now it's done all over the United States. And then we also have 101, which is the middle school, and then Jump into Mental Health is for 5th and 6th graders. We just added on the 5th grade, and we're looking at perhaps developing the curriculum for 4th graders as well. A few teen workshops that happen throughout the year, and then we're moving away from our cohort teen support group and moving that more to literally a group that meets every week for teens as well. So that's going to be coming in the future. Okay. Any questions? I'll jump back up to that. I want to share our Instagram and Facebook. If you're not already following us, please do. We are very active on those. We keep all of our events and activities posted. And then I mentioned our gala, which is this weekend. Gala is your kind of thing. It's masquerade themed. You wear, order a mask. We're still accepting tickets for that. It's going to be a really fun night. That's on our website too. But then our next big thing is on June 10th. It's an annual 5K run called Run for the Mind. So the URL is there, NAMIDuPage.org/RFTM, which is Run for the Mind. And that's where you can form a team, do some fundraising. You don't have to run a 5K, you can walk it, but then we're also have a youth component to it this year where we're going to have a 1 mile color run. So if that's also kind of your thing, we encourage you to do that. For the color run, we're sharing the proceeds with Serenity House, DuPage Leadership Prevention Team, and our organization, NAMI DuPage. The 5K run walk is our part of the fundraiser. So, and that's going to be over at the DuPage County Fairgrounds on the morning of June 10th. So you sign up, you get a t-shirt, and you also get a free pancake breakfast. So I think those are all of my slides. So I'll pause there. See if there's any more questions up here. Patsy, I think I answered your question.
Sorry. Looks like someone was wondering if there is a NAMI in Michigan.
I believe there is. So if you go to NAMI.org, they've got a really good tool on there where you could kind of hover over and look for your state, or even I think put in your zip code, and it'll show you the organizations that are local to that area.
Awesome. Thank you.
Somebody said looking for a local meeting for help supporting a family member. Yes, we do. So the family support group, the family to family class, and occasionally we have another course called Family and Friends Seminar or Workshop. We've kind of used that name interchangeably. It is a very condensed version of the 8-week family to family course. And we offer that either in a 2-hour format or a 4-hour. Oftentimes that's a really good stopgap for people who maybe can't do the 8-week class right now, but they're able to go to that. So again, it's all about how to understand the mental health condition and how to support your loved one. And sometimes there needs to be boundaries in that relationship, and kind of changes the way you talk with your loved one. And so it really, for those who've gone through that, my sister happened to live with a mental health condition. So I know there was a lot of like head butting and miscommunications and stuff. So it's just understanding how to really, respond to one another. So either the family and friends workshop, the family support group, or the family to family education class are going to be really, really key. We also do offer one-on-one family support through that family partnership professional. If you wanted to have a one-on-one with, the individuals actually leads the program. Nancy is her name. So you can always just reach out for that as well. Another question here. Oh, I'm really sorry, Jacqueline. South suburban Chicago. So there's actually a NAMI affiliate down in that area. Can't remember which one it is exactly. If you put in the zip code, the right one will pop up. So they might have some resources, some specific resources for you or your friend. coming out of that area. Chicagoland's a big area, so you definitely would want to get connected with the services that are right there, because when we talked about access to care, when you're able to access those local resources, which are so important, you're eliminating a barrier about people not getting there for those services. So if you can access those local services, those are going to be really helpful. I'm gonna pull off of the slide there. Does anybody else have any other questions? Right now, those are all really good questions.
If there weren't any other questions, I just wanted to thank you, Meredith, for all of your thoughtfulness and the time and energy you put into your presentation and to be here with us tonight. And I know John's vulnerability was very appreciated by all of us.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that everyone can take something away for Mental Health Month, which is this month, and then also just everyday life following that. So thank you again, I appreciate it. And then if there's anyone who wasn't here in the beginning, the program was recorded, so we can always go back and watch that. It'll be on our YouTube channel, hopefully within the next week or so.
Okay.
If there weren't any other questions, that was it. I hope everyone has a really nice evening.
Thank you for having me, and just feel free to reach out to NAMI DuPage for any other resources. We're here for you.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.